Cool. I'll try and catch up on time. Let's see how we do. So desktop one and presentation. Where is the? There it is. Lovely. Okay. So for the last 3 or 4 months, I've been on interim apprentice PM for the Optimize group, formerly known as Analytics group. So I just want to sort of talk about my experience of being a PM and some of the learnings that I've taken away from it and how I'm going to apply those learnings to my future life as a designer. So as I said, I'm in the Optimize team, which is the stage group formerly known as Value Stream, which is the artist formerly known as Analytics. And as I said, I was a senior designer for the Optimize team. I get so confused with this. And then I stood in for a few months as the product manager. Now Larissa has joined. She moved from a different part of GitLab as a product, and now I'm back to being a designer. And I'd say that our time within the analytics team, we've seen how I'd phrase it as some iteration. So we've had a few different product managers sort of stepping in. And this has had a sort of a bit of an impact on the way the team has sort of collaborated and how we've maintained focus and all that sort of good stuff. So some of the key challenges that we've had, which have sort of related to this turnover of PMs, is Optimize has a number of different categories which are still relatively nascent. Both to GitLab and also to the markets themselves. So finding product market fit has been difficult. There's a lot of technical constraints with the data scope that we're working in when it comes to working across the instance and finding the right amount of performance. And then there's also a lot of stakeholders that we need to keep happy and balance and satisfy with some of the stuff that we're shipping. So these are all some of the things that potentially led to some of the turnover, as well as sort of like shaping the way that our team operates. So what it feels like to design within this sort of context where the PM's changing a lot of the time is that it's been lots of different pivots and what sometimes felt like wasted work. Not really being able to plan 2 or 3 milestones ahead, but also going from like sort of milestone to milestone, being quite tactical, not enough iteration or incremental iteration, and also sort of relatively poor communication and understanding between the different disciplines in the team. So we really wanted to address this. And I really wanted to try and address this in my time that I was acting PM. So when I was told that I would be PM by Jeremy, I was a little bit surprised, but I sort of had a number of very glaringly obvious first impressions. And the first thing that happened to me was my calendar sort of filled up exponentially. And I moved from maker time to manager time. And that was a big shock to the system, especially being in GitLab and working the way that we do. So yeah, having maybe an hour or two of meetings a day to 4 or 5 hours of meetings a day was yeah, big shock to the system. I was being asked to participate a lot more in meetings, so I had to sort of bring my A game to those 5 hours of meetings as well. So that was again another challenge. And I also needed to be a lot more mindful and aware of all the issues which were coming through the pipeline, all the stuff within the value stream, beyond just the scope of UX and front end. So again, this required me to learn quite a bit more about what was happening on the back end side of things, as well as get a broader understanding for sort of what was happening higher up and further down the track. And as well as that, I felt like PMs wear just so many more hats. They're constantly context switching and doing different things. One time in one call, they'll be speaking with customers, pitching a vision. Another call, maybe like working with a team, understanding what some technical constraints are. Another maybe planning. So it's constantly context switching based on like the mode, the content. It was really quite challenging to get a grip of, which made me realize that PMs are truly like the kings and queens of context switching. So yeah, there's a lot of respect that I have for him there. So I wanted to sort of talk about some of my experience with these different hats that I was trying on as a PM. The first hat that I tried on was the prioritizer. And I never realized how many different variables that PMs needed to consider in order to prioritize what goes into a milestone and what not, and when things should be shipped. There's a lot of dependencies. There's a lot of input from customers. There's a lot of technical constraints. So basically, it seems like PMs have this tremendous juggling act with all the different variables going on for the features and issues that they're looking at. And it really is quite an art form to prioritize the right things at the right time, because I don't think there's like a specific equation that you can put to it. I think it just requires experience and know-how and knowledge of the content itself. So that's the prioritizer hat. And you'll have to pardon the terrible pictures that I drew as well. So the storyteller. So another big thing that I found, another sort of archetype that I found that I was sort of embodying as I was in a number of the meetings, is sort of talking about how we got to now with regards to the features and functionality that we've included within the product. So sort of summarizing the history and timeline of the steps that we've taken and where we are currently, as well as like looking forward and thinking, where do we actually need to go? And I found myself both to customers and to different team members regularly summarizing where have we come from and where are we going to go, and getting their input on that story as well, and using that as a tool to sort of drive the team forward and also garner feedback as well. Another hat that I wore as a PM was the planner. So I put this term here. I think it's like a Chinese proverb: crossing the river by feeling the stones. So having a good understanding of where you need to go as a team in the next quarter, in the next year, in the next 3 years, whatever it is, but also being aware of the pitfalls and challenges that we have along the way. So we're sort of understanding where we need to go, but we're also being mindful of the actual path that we need to take. So the planner is, as a PM, really mindful of what are the obstructions that we currently have in the way, but where do we need to go, and how do we balance that in order to get to achieve the goal that we're trying to achieve. The scientist, understanding the key metrics that we're trying to drive, that we're trying to move the needle on, and figuring out ways to experiment with the features and functionality that we're shipping in order to learn more about what we're doing. So moving those metrics, building the features that we think will help to shift those metrics, measuring the outcomes, and then learning about what we did along the way. So the scientist hat is another one. And then the networker is speaking with a bunch of different customers, but also speaking with a bunch of different groups and teams as well, who we are interacting with and who we currently sort of share a number of areas of the product with, making sure that we're aligned on some of the product decisions, and also getting input from customers. And I found that I previously assumed that customer interviews were actually very similar to user interviews, but upon sort of doing more and more of them, I realized that the scope of it was quite different. It's how I'd sort of define more as like a stakeholder interview rather than a user interview. And the type of conversations you have are different within customer interviews. So I'd really recommend for designers to, if they're not doing it already, sit in customer interviews and get an understanding of what some of the product managers are talking about with customers and how that's driving their decision making. And then just like a general all-around fixer in the UK, we had like a little kids TV show called Bob the Builder, and this was modeled on him. But it's all about just basically seeing what's currently blocking the pipeline and getting it out of the way, so that the engineering team can ship features as quickly as possible and increase the throughput. So really, product managers are jacks of all trade and potentially masters of all trade as well, and it's really admirable, because I was barely hanging on. So some of the takeaways that I had from this experience and trying all these different hats on, I found that the sway that I had on the user experience as a PM, well, I had much more influence on the end user experience as a PM than I did as a designer. And that just made me as a designer and how I collaborated with my previous PMs. But I found that, yeah, I had a lot more influence on what the experience was like. And there is also a lot of potential overlap between the responsibilities of PM and UX. And I don't see this as stealing each other's tasks or stealing each other's activities. I actually see it as a good opportunity for increased collaboration and approaching different tasks or activities from slightly different perspectives and slightly different mindsets. So we might as well understand what it's like to walk in PM's shoes a little bit more. And I know I'm mixing metaphors here, but yeah, seeing how PMs think and work and trying on those different hats from the perspective of a designer, I think would be super useful for people in the team. And I think it's going to be super useful for me as well going forward. And this will enable better collaboration with the PMs through better understanding, which will enable better results. And overall, it'll give our PMs some time to relax as well. So based on all this sort of stuff I talked about, I was thinking of some just generally actionable steps that we could take away from this. Number one is, I think, jumping on customer calls. If you're not doing so already, would be really valuable. Contribute to things that that PMs are working on, things like release posts and direction pages. Sort of step out and think about the strategy and also the way that we're presenting the products to the market. And that may help to inspire you in the way that you are doing your designs. Try goal setting. See whether for a milestone you can individually do some goal setting and then compare notes with a PM and see what happens. Like, who knows? Something interesting could happen. Read the book Inspired. That's the first book that I read as a PM, and it really provided a lot of insight into why we do things the way we do within GitLab. So that's a great book. It's by like Silicon Valley something. And then, as I said before, there's a lot of shared responsibilities and activities that PMs and designers can have. And I invite you to try on the different hats that I sort of talked about that PMs typically try on, and think about how you can use your design skills and different approach to clarify and build on whatever the PM's doing or how they're communicating, to see whether you can get to a better place in general. So that's like a little whistle-stop tour of my experience as a PM. I appreciate you listening. I want to leave everyone on this little quote, which comes from Valerie. I didn't try drawing Valerie because I don't want to draw the UX director and get myself in trouble. So every designer, no matter what level, has the opportunity to collaborate with PMs and EMs to influence prioritization. The goal is to get 2 to 3 months ahead, and this will open opportunities for longer term, more strategic thinking. So I thought that sort of summarized up what I'm trying to get at here. And there's the issue down here that you can look into and potentially comment on as well. And yeah, thank you very much for listening.